Cool.
Hey guys, Devin here with Make Anything. Now, back in my 3Doodler 3D pen review, I discovered by accident, sort of, that if you draw on leather with a 3D pen and then peel it off, it leaves this really cool lighter tone. I promised you guys I would play around with that some more, and since then I got the 3DSimo Mini, which has leather burning capabilities. So I thought it would be super cool if I could combine leather burning and whatever the name for this technique is, and make something really cool out of it. I actually have a really nice leather backpack I designed a year ago, and I was thinking that it looked a little bare, so it's actually the perfect thing for me to use these techniques on. So let's go ahead and look at what I can do. So the first thing I did was swap in this kind of chisel-shaped hot end for the 3DSimo Mini, and I'm going to make sure that I screw it in a way that it allows me to create both thin lines and broad lines based on the direction that I'm drawing. Then I'll plug it in and heat it up. Now if you just press the feed button, it'll heat up, but only while you're holding down the button, and you pretty much want this to get hot and stay hot, so you're going to want to press down both buttons at the same time, and that'll put it into continuous operation mode. Here I have a scrap piece of leather that I was testing out on, just to kind of get a feel for how fast I want to move and how dark the marks are going to be before I actually start working on my backpack. I discovered that this tool works pretty well for both the broad lines and thin lines, and it works on both sides of the leather as well, in case you're thinking of working on the inside of the hide. So once again I wanted to try out my filament removal technique, and I did find that PLA stuck a lot better than ABS to the leather. So here I'm using this fluorescent PLA, but really the color doesn't matter at all, because we're just using it to peel off some of the color of the leather. So before actually doing this, I took a photo of my backpack and brought it into Photoshop so that I could kind of test out different designs. I've only got one of these backpacks, so I don't want to mess it up. And what I did was create two layers on top of my backpack. One is set to multiply and the other one is set to screen, which are two different modes that basically make it lighten or darken the image below it. So I was able to kind of simulate both the leather burning and the 3D pen on the leather as well. So I just kind of scribbled out some different designs, and I ended up doing this kind of symmetrical artwork that's got kind of Native American feel with a lot of little details working out from the center Make Anything logo. I thought it looked pretty cool, so I decided to go with this design. So I'll just have that right in front of me while I'm working on my backpack as a reference to what I want to do. So now I can get out the actual backpack, and I'm going to make sure to pull the straps apart and lay it as flat as possible, at least for this top section where I'm going to be doing my leather burning. And then I'm going to swap out this filament back for the leather burning tool. Now if you have the 3DSimo app, you can just select leather for the wood burning tool, and that'll automatically set the temperature. And you can also set it into continuous operation mode through your phone as well. So now it's time to start working on the backpack, which is pretty nerve-wracking, but you just have to start. So what I did was kind of just use the very tip of the burning tool and use that to pretty much sketch out the middle diamond of my design, just to figure out the proportion and get everything started. So I'm kind of just scratching into the leather, but it is also running, so it's burning into it just a little bit. And I'm going to draw out my triangles as well, and then I've got this. So you can see it was pretty messy, but now I'm just going to burn over all of those scribbles, so that'll hide all my initial sketching. Now you'll notice I rotate the backpack a lot, and that's very important because you want to use the burner in a natural position, otherwise you're going to have trouble making very clean and smooth lines like this. So I'll burn the outlines first using the broad end of this chisel burner, and then I'll go ahead and start filling in the actual dark areas of my design. It's not very different from just using a Sharpie to fill in a dark area. You just want to keep the speed kind of consistent so that the burn doesn't look so blotchy. Now for these outer details, it's super easy to get these short little straight lines because all you have to do is press that one edge of the burning tool down, and it creates that nice consistent little line. And I sort of based my design on the tool because I knew I would be able to do this and create these little details all the way around. It's a very simple trick, but when you have a lot of it and you kind of play around with it a bit, it turns out pretty impressive. It's also really easy to create these small diamond shapes by just using that same end and then dragging it over just a bit to make it into a square. And you can go back and forth until you get the darkness that you desired. You can see I'm using my pinky to kind of stabilize my hand. That's a pretty common way to make sure that you get nice clean lines. Now I've got another kind of geometric design out here, and I want these lines to be a little thicker, so I'm going to run along the edge of that burning tool, but I'm going to go back and forth a few times and purposefully not stay on exactly the same line, just so that I can get the lines being a little darker and bolder. So I'm doing a symmetrical design here, and I'll start by doing that middle long line, and then go off here to one side and create the other two lines, and then just go over to the other side and try to match the lengths there. So it helps to be good at eyeballing with this kind of work, because you're really just judging how far apart to make each line and trying to keep it consistent. Of course, you could use tailor's chalk and draw out your design on the backpack first, but I was pretty confident in my freehanding skills, so I didn't do that. Now I had these circles in the design, and this chisel tip wasn't really working for that purpose, so I'm going to swap it out for this little spoon-shaped hot end, and I think that'll do the job easier. So I unplugged it and let it cool down and then swapped out the ends. And it was totally worth it because this tool works a lot better for the circles and I imagine just about any wavy or more organic line. For this design, I only used it for these 4 circles because everything else in my design is pretty much straight lines. So that's where the chisel tool is perfect. Once I got the circles in there, it's back to using this sharp edge. And rather than just doing all of the design on one side and then going to the other side and trying to make it symmetrical, I do one feature at a time, and then I do all the different copies of that feature on every side of the backpack. So I'm kind of building the whole thing out progressively, and that helps with symmetry as well. I'll also try to align things based on previous designs. So with this line, I'll kind of center it between those 2 lines, and then I'll align it with the one sunbeam on this little thing so that I can get a pretty similar line on the other end by using those same references. Alright, so that's half of the work. That is all the leather burning. So now I'm going to go ahead and swap out back to the 3D pen attachment for the 3DSimo. And I'll kind of purge out some plastic to make sure it's running well. And then it's time to use my second technique to get those lighter areas. And I'll start in the center once again by outlining the Make Anything triangles. I've got this on medium speed, and I'm making sure that I let a lot of plastic come out of the pen so that it really sticks onto the leather and it'll hopefully pull off a lot of color on the top. Once it's cooled down, I can just peel it off, and as you see, it works really well on some areas, while there were other areas where it didn't work quite as well. I'm not really sure why some areas work better than others, but wherever there were troubled areas, I would just go over them again, and then it worked out pretty well. So as I said, this entire time, I've got my laptop just out of the frame of this shot, and I'm constantly referring to that to know what I'm doing.
I totally freestyle a lot of my projects, but in this one I'm referencing my digital sketch the entire way. I'm basically trying to copy it as closely as possible, which I guess is probably generally the good way to go. This actually looked kind of cool with the fluorescent pink PLA on it, so that's another option, to just let the plastic stay on the leather, although it doesn't stick super well. You can use a 3D pen on cotton t-shirts and things like that, and it'll generally stick pretty well, so that's another idea. 3D pen on your clothing. You can see again I'm going over those areas that didn't quite come out right. And as long as I'm good at following the same line, I can do that as many times as I need to until I get the exact color that I want. To finish things off, I went around that logo again in the center with the burning tool nice and hot, so I kind of darkened that and sharpened all those little triangles. And there is my final design, just as I had sketched it out on the computer.
Is that neat or what? I am super happy with how this turned out. The combination of leather burning and leather plastic peeling. Okay, leave a comment if you guys have a good name for this technique of drawing on it with a 3D pen and peeling it off, because I need to call it something. Anyways, I hope you guys liked it. I'm really happy with how this turned out. It looks pretty professional and yet crafty and unique. Even if you don't want to make something from scratch out of leather, you could always buy a leather belt or a leather wallet or something and add your own flair with these techniques. So it's a pretty neat way to add some personality and individuality to your stuff. Alright, that's it for this one. Hope you guys liked it. I thought it was pretty cool. It was kind of a different project compared to what I usually do. A lot more organic material and a little less plastic. Thank you for watching, and thanks to all my supporters on Patreon for making this possible. If you guys aren't yet following me on Patreon, it's pretty cool. I leave a lot of photos of things that I'm working on and take suggestions and build off of your guys' ideas on that Patreon only feed. And also, I'll have some polls so you can tell me if you want to see more stuff like this, or more VR modeling, 3D pen art, 3D printing, of course. I'm doing it for you guys, and I want to know what you want to see. So, thanks again. Until next time, I'm Devin. This is Make Anything. Stay inspired.